welcome to the Outreach Northeast podcast. The introductory podcast, if you will. My name's Sasha. I am a project coordinator for the Northeast Uni Connect programme. I'm joined here by my colleague Rachel, and really, today we're going to chat about kind of what's coming up, what we've got available for, we say teachers and advisors in the region, but anyone really with an interest in kind of education, supporting progression to higher education, and just seeing a little bit more about what's on offer across the Northeast. So Rachel, do you want to introduce yourself first of all?
I'm Rachel. I am the Senior Project Coordinator for the Northeast Uni Connect Partnership or Programme, whichever P that we decide to use. I'm really excited for this because we've said for a while now that we want to try and bring higher education and widening participation and our many different abbreviations that we tend to talk to kind of into a more familiar territory really, and make it a little bit more accessible. So we hope that in this situation that we all seem to find ourselves in, whether it be virtual or in an audio kind of scenario, that we can have a conversation, I think, and that's kind of what we're hoping for, isn't it, Sasha? A bit more of a conversation of higher education, what it is, what's the pitfalls, what's the positives, like all the little intricacies that we maybe assume that people know. But I think it's safe to say that we all are still learning. Me and Sasha still learn every day. So this is a very exciting opportunity, I think.
Just to echo that, you will hear us, as Rachel said, maybe use the wrong kind of explanation of an acronym every now and again to describe the different projects that we are aware of and that we work on. So if you're kind of sat wondering what's going on in the region and what the different outreach work and what the different acronyms you see mean, hopefully, certainly by the end of the first couple of podcasts and by some of the other things we're doing, that'll become a little bit more clear. We're best to explain.
And whilst we're practitioners, we are by no means experts. And you might hear us talk about things maybe in a bit more layman's terms and more kind of general speak, but there's a purpose to that. There is nothing worse than people talking in technical language and you thinking, well, I don't understand what that means. We hate, and I sometimes am the worst for speaking in abbreviations and acronyms and everything else. So I apologise now. I'll give Sasha the opportunity to draw a red flag and say, no, explain what that is before we start. But we are just like you, whether you're a teacher, an advisor, a WP practitioner, or someone who WP, widening participation, I said it before. Or whether you just want to know a little bit more about higher education in the Northeast, or just higher education in general. We are just people, so we'll try and keep it as clear as we possibly can as we go through.
I didn't even pull you up for that acronym.
This is the thing. It's so normal. It's really bad.
If at any point you're listening and you just think, what are they going on about? If at any point we don't pull each other up, or some of the guests that we've got coming on, drop us an email. The contact details up at the end. Let us know. Get in touch via social media. Otherwise, it's just me and Rachel having a chat.
Yeah, which is lovely. I love doing that anyway, which is great.
Okay, shall we talk a little bit more about what the full podcast series is going to be then, or what we think it's going to be across the year? Because we're doing this little introduction today. We're doing this introduction having already recorded a full episode, which is a strange situation.
Bit backwards and coming forwards, but that's the way we like it.
Yeah, so I think the first kind of what we're aiming to do, as Rachel said, is just chat about higher education, what's available. The first kind of the episode that we've already got recorded and that will be available very soon is us talking about kind of our roles in widening participation and higher education progression, and what's available in the Northeast to support kind of teachers, advisors, young people, anyone with that sort of interest. That was a really nice discussion. You'll hear it soon.
I know, teaser.
Yeah, wasn't it? To kind of, we unpick, I think, a lot of the language that's used in that.
We were really fortunate to have some fantastic guests on that first kind of episode, who have a real broad knowledge around kind of what's on offer, why it's important, and a breadth of experience behind them that they can kind of almost evidence what they say, really. So it was nice to almost challenge them in the same way that we're going to challenge ourselves into asking them, well, why is that important, and why do we need so many partnerships and so many initiatives? And sometimes it feels that, I don't know if you're a teacher and advisor listening or watching, you think there's so much going on, like I don't know which is the best one for me, or why it's there, or why should I go with you rather than someone else. um it was nice to kind of, not interrogate's the wrong word, but maybe challenge some of that thinking of peers and colleagues just like us, to say, well, why do we do this, and why are we important? Like, you don't need us to tell you how to do your job, but it's a good conversation to have, I think.
This one kind of coming out really when we talk about who we are, what we do, what you can kind of expect if you were to get in touch with us, and and what we can help with. In terms of what's coming up.
Well, very good question. So we are running on that theme of, trying to unpick the reasons behind certain things, certain initiatives, and why things are important. And what we've tried to do is plan a series of episodes, a series of podcasts that are kind of relevant for the time of year. So you might be thinking, at a certain point in the year, around supporting your students if they are thinking about trying to apply for higher education, or it might be that you are yourself trying to plan your full careers program, and how higher education outreach can support you with that, and why would you do that, and how do these two things meet and can help each other out. So we'll kind of unpick those things as we go through, really. And one thing that we're really passionate about, and I say we, I don't want to speak for Sasha, but I certainly am very, very passionate about, and I think I touched on it in the first episode, is we want this podcast to try and join the dots up a little bit between what is expected of us in society, but what is expected of us as educational professionals with regards to careers, and how higher education will support that. And because everything has a mutual aim, or everything has almost like a core kind of a spine that is exactly the same. So what we're wanting to try and do, and what my role is, I suppose, in the partnership, is to bring those things together and say, okay, let's all work together to collaborate on this, and I'll do this bit for you, and this is how you can then take that forward. So those are kind of the conversations that we'll be having with different guests and with ourselves. We're hopefully not just talking to ourselves the whole time. But yeah, so I mean, Sasha, you might be able to tell me a little bit more.
I think we did talk a lot about joining the dots, and I think for me, I think we're so fortunate in this region in particular to have so much going on.
Yeah.
In education for young people, for their parents and carers, for teachers and advisors. There's a lot out there, and I feel quite fortunate sometimes to know about that, and to know what's going on, and to understand that. And I think to kind of shout about that a little bit more, and make sure that anyone who wants to know exactly what's going on in the region and how it might help does that.
Exactly.
And I feel quite privileged to be able to contribute to that, I suppose.
Well, exactly. And I mean, we are the Northeast Uni Connect programme as well, but by no means is this an exclusive members club. If we have listeners from outside of the region or elsewhere, we've had, and we've been really fortunate, Sasha says, to have quite a lot of things going on as well in the like the Gatsby Good Career benchmarks that are now synonymous with the career strategy, and the way that the kind of government want us to take forward within schools and colleges. That pilot was in the Northeast. We have an amazing opportunity with the Opportunity Northeast funding. That's kind of supporting schools to maybe come out and develop from difficult situations to support their learners. And we've got some really good emerging best practice. So it's a good opportunity for us to kind of showcase that and what's happening in the Northeast, because I'd like to say that we deserve a little bit of good press. Every now and again, I don't want to, toot my own horn, but I think this region has got some really, really good qualities and have some fantastic partners within the programme that I think would benefit from, getting their voice out there a little bit more.
Moving forwards, in terms of our podcast, and we can talk a little bit in a minute about things outside of that, perhaps that we know are coming up as well. Just a really good opportunity to speak to different people, have some different guests on. Obviously, our first one, as we've said, we talk about the support available in the region, how our projects play into that, and explain some of those acronyms. Following that, we're planning to kind of discuss higher education. That's going to be one hell of a discussion. I think to start unpicking that, but really drill down in terms of, what we take it to mean in our region in terms of qualifications available and what's out there, and kind of how sometimes that's perhaps overlooked in the language that we use, and
overcomplicated.
Yeah, absolutely overcomplicated. That's why I say it's going to be one hell of a discussion, I think. But we're really excited to kind of to share that with you.
If any of you kind of took part in or were a participant or an audience member in our HE Fest this year or in 2020, you will have seen or heard of our podcast with a friend of the partnership, I would say, Chris Cook, and we'll be re-releasing that, if you like. We'll have it as part of our HE Fest kind of content, but also as a podcast. The conversation itself was really worthwhile, and we discussed making decisions in difficult circumstances and overcoming adversity, which I think particularly now for our young people is really important. I think we've got a generation of learners who are feeling a little bit lost. I mean, there was a recent Prince's Trust report that has just came out that half of young people, or just less than half of young people from poorer backgrounds, feel like there's just no hope left, which is so sad. And it emphasizes the importance of the work that we do, but the work that careers professionals and careers advisors do to show that young people that there's a purpose of what you're doing, and there's an end goal. And in such difficult circumstances, it's really nice to hear kind of Chris's voice within that, as a local lad who was at South Shields, went to a local school, but had a single focus. And he talks about kind of some of he calls them choices as opposed to sacrifices, that he made, and the way he was able to kind of focus his mindset to get to where he was, which was not really a very successful athlete in his own right. So that's definitely a listen. Yeah. Even my parents enjoyed that one.
Yeah. I mean, I took a lot from the discussion.
Yes.
I think it's testament. I really enjoyed that chat that we had, and took a lot from it, personally, professionally. It was really excited to be able to share that with all audiences, I think, as part of HE Fest. And it's relevant. I think that we find ourselves, and it's the statistic you gave just then is really, really sad for people to feel like that. So particularly in the current climate, and we're all kind of finding different ways of working and overcoming different, I don't want to say barriers, challenges.
Interesting times, one may
interesting
say.
Yeah, it's what we kept saying. Finding ways through that and really kind of using it as an opportunity to reflect and move forwards, I think is useful at any time, but now more so than ever, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think you're right in what you're saying in terms of not overshadowing the professional experience. As you'll see, myself and Sasha, if you're watching the video podcast, we are in our homes. That is a radiator just underneath my armpit there. For those of you who are just listening, I'm pointing to the radiator. So it is a very different situation that we find ourselves in, and by no means are we not busy. I think every practitioner and every person that's working in a college or a school or a university will be testament to that. And we empathise with your situations. This is not a quiet time. We're just in a bit of a different location, but that brings its own challenges and things to overcome, I suppose. And will come in waves, which is a new one to me. I wasn't expecting that. But I think which is another reason why I wanted to do this series of podcasts anyway. And myself and Sasha were chatting, I think just yesterday, in the fact that, whilst we are in this situation, we want it to be a little kind of welcome chat. So it's if you just sat at the other side of a table or the other side of a living room, just having a cuppa, and then, ultimately when things return to a little bit more normal, or you're starting to do your daily commute, however you're doing that, it'd be hopefully a good kind of a start to your day, to kind of get your mind into those kind of ways of working with, hopefully, I hope, some like-minded people, with a northern accent.
I'm a different bit of the north, but
yeah, still nice. I suppose still the north.
No one will notice. Yeah, it's fine. Talked about that in the context of HE Fest.
Yes.
For those who are listening that might not have been aware of HE Fest, or
where were you?
Yeah, you missed out. I think we should say a little bit about it, because by no means, we've just said, where were you? Why didn't you come? You can still catch up with the things that happen. So HE Fest for us was a week-long virtual higher education festival that we ran at the end of the summer term, all online, 5 days of content aimed at young people, their parents and carers, and teachers, advisors, kind of widening participation practitioners. There was a little bit of something for everyone.
Yeah,
I would say. I think we managed to get some really, really great sessions delivered during the week. So we had sessions every day, delivered by ourselves, delivered by our partner institutions, delivered by other kind of organisations, like key sector organisations. And supporting that was the function for kind of people to engage with us and chat to us about those sessions, and also visit kind of the first virtual exhibition that I've ever been involved with.
Yeah.
But a bit like a virtual careers or education fair, really. We had those as well. And it was great, wasn't it?
Oh, it was so much fun. I think at a time when there was no festivals able to happen in person, I mean, myself and Sasha and Lucy, our colleague, who you'll meet in episode 1, we lived this festival essentially for a lot longer than most people. But it was such a positive experience, and I hope, as Sasha says, that the content will be available throughout the year, and we'll talk a little bit more about kind of when that will be coming out. But the collaboration and the partnership of not just kind of key sector professionals, but also employers in the region. We had our first employer fair to kind of talk about, why higher education was important to their business, and, how they were supporting students, and, their advice in this current situation was just so exciting. Those of you who know myself and Sasha know that it was a little tight of a turnaround, but it was the feedback and the excitement that colleagues from Careers Enterprise Company and Student Loans Company and others was just phenomenal. I loved it. I love it now. I loved it then, but I very much love it more now.
Yeah, this is going to come back to haunt us, saying we love it. absolutely. I think it was I think for us, it was a real achievement what we managed to pull together, and for everyone involved. We're so thankful for their involvement. But it was just a nice end to an interesting academic year, I would say.
Yes, that is a very good way of putting it.
It was a little bit of positivity when things perhaps were more challenging, particularly for young people. I think we focused quite a lot on kind of their next steps for those that were, starting to make those decisions and considering their futures. We were able to dip into that. And
at the time they were so uncertain on what that next step was going to look like, what was going to happen with results day, what was going to happen, what opportunities were going to be available to those students. So it was a good opportunity, and those who do revisit that content, we kept it quite as open as we possibly could, because the opportunities that were potentially going to be available were vast. It was like, talking to students and practitioners right at the beginning of an academic year, as opposed to, coming towards the end of an academic year. So those of you who do look at that content and listen in, you'll hear like the full breadth. And we talk about things right from the beginning of, introducing what higher education is. Because for some young people, it enabled an opportunity to consider it again. It was back on the table. We discussed kind of what the admissions kind of process would normally be, as well as kind of what it might have looked like. That ended up not looking like that at all. So that was an interesting conversation to have in retrospect. So, and then we looked at things like student finance, as we know that's such a big kind of consideration for young people, their parents and families, and whoever else might be supporting them, right the way through to transition. And I think that's something that we all, not that we forget, but we maybe don't put as much emphasis on the transition support that might be needed. So thinking about, goal setting, time management, reassessing, and getting into that kind of growth mindset and that positive mindset to be able to fulfill whatever choice that the students decided to go to. And obviously, as we mentioned, Chris Cook's podcast was part of that kind of program of activity, and it was really nice to be able to offer that full breadth of support at a time when I think everyone was a little bit, I just don't really know what to do. So I mean, let's watch this space for 2021.
2021. Well, we've just admitted in a recorded discussion that will be aired across the region that we really loved it. So fingers crossed for 2021.
Fingers crossed. I think we'll be fine in saying that dates of 2021 may be announced in the upcoming podcast.
From last year's HE Fest will be released across the academic year, so keep an eye out. Not just, we're going to release kind of all bits, all aspects of the content, so things for yourselves, things that you can send on to your students if they perhaps missed the festival and are looking for a little bit of information or where to find out more. Absolutely, they'll all start to be released over the next few months, which is really quite exciting to see.
And again, that content, I think I'm right, Sasha, in saying that we'll have everything available, but we might do a little focused bit of social media, or announce kind of a particular theme that might be the most appropriate for that part of the academic year. What I would really stress, to be fair though, is that whilst higher education sounds, and obviously we talk about the application cycle and when it's most appropriate in the academic year, if you're a teacher and advisor who is in 11 to 16 school or supports 11 to 16 students, don't feel like this podcast, these series of podcasts, HE Fest content, anything else that we do to support you isn't relevant for you. What I would say is it completely is, and we always have the full student cycle right the way from primary school, if we're honest, in mind. So it's good to know when these things are important, when it comes to applying. But for you guys, obviously, use us and ask us when things might be most appropriate. That's what we're here for. We're here to support you. So do ask if there's anything that you think, well, I really like that, but I'm not too sure when to use it. Just come and ask. We hope, and I hope that we've got, primary school colleagues or earlier, perhaps, and early years, maybe chipping in and like listening in and, give us your opinions on, what kind of things do you want us to talk about that would be suitable for your students. I mean, you'll hear it in the first episode, but multiple partners that do span the full breadth, really, probably from about year 6, I would say, for primary school. But we do understand the importance of reaching that younger age group, because ultimately that's the most impressionable age.
Absolutely. I think as well, and I'm going to put the first plug in here because I know that this is something I'm wanting to do. If you are doing something kind of in your institution, school, college, wherever it is you're listening from, that you think most people should hear about, please tell us. Please, be our guest. Let's all chat a little bit about kind of what is going on and the ways in which we're working with these young people at each stage in their kind of educational career. If you're doing something really successful, let's tell everyone
about it.
Because I know that we're wanting to kind of get a little bit more of that and to be able to really share what the practice is going on across the region. So if you're listening, suggestions, but also give yourselves a pat on the back. Tell us about what you're doing, because we'd love to hear it. I know I certainly would.
Oh, definitely. I love a good cheerlead.
So that's
I've been top number 1 cheerleader.
That is the first little plug. You'll hear us ask for that in every episode, I think, following this one. That's the first little plug, but just keep that in the back of your minds. One thing we've not talked about, which I know we've got coming up this year, which will fall into this, is UCAS.
Yes, this is so exciting. And I know, I hope I can speak on behalf of UCAS that they're also excited for this. One thing that the virtual world has allowed us to do is building a closer link with UCAS. For those who maybe went to conferences as part of their CPD offer, I think it's fair to say that it's usually further south, either in London or somewhere that's maybe north, but maybe not our north, if you know what I mean. And that's due to obviously various different reasons. But what the virtual world allows both UCAS and ourselves to do is to move things maybe a little bit more to the northeast, and to support our teachers and advisors who maybe otherwise would have been unable to access that support, because we understand it's not just 1-day conference, and it's not just a 2-day conference that you just need to book onto. It's all the cover, it's all the pre-prep work, it's the additional travel time and everything that takes out your diary, which I suppose in this situation has been taken away. But we've been able to create a more accessible series of CPD throughout the academic year and throughout the application cycle as well. So our first one that we'll signpost to shortly, and we'll provide some links either at the end of this or in subsequent emails and things. We'll signpost to the national webinar. Couldn't think of the word there. I was like, what's online and begins with a W?
We go to enough of them. It's amazing that we can forget the term.
I know, it's really bad, isn't it? So their latest webinar, or their most upcoming webinar, is around personal statements, which is in November. So coming up shortly. So we'll signpost to that. That's a national programme. They've got a lot of things going on as part of their kind of CPD and teacher and advisor support, as well as student support at this point of the year. So it seems silly not to enable you all to access that and access not just their thinking, but you can see, what colleagues nationally are asking what questions are they considering, what are their students also saying. It might provide maybe a little bit of solidarity in terms of, oh my God, it's not just our group of students that are thinking X, Y, and Z. They all are. We're fortunate to have a series of webinars which will be kind of pre-recorded, so the topic will be kind of released. But the following week, UCAS have agreed to do a kind of bespoke Q&A for our North East teachers and advisors and practitioners. So for example, if we were to do something on, I'm going to pick a random date because I don't have a calendar in front of us, so I can only apologise. In fact, I've got a calendar right there. So if we were to do one in the month of October this month, if we did it on a Tuesday the 13th as the topic on the webinar, the following week on the 20th, we would have a live Q&A. So you've got a week to kind of access that webinar and see, what questions you might have. It might be an opportunity to share it with colleagues who might be in a similar position, or if you're the careers lead and you've maybe got someone responsible for higher education, or you've got the director of sixth form or college or whoever, you can all access it, team up your questions, and submit that either before the Q&A or during the Q&A, which will be, I think I'm right in saying 8 o'clock, I think, Sasha, we said?
Yeah,
or early on that.
Early mornings we're going, yeah. So kind of just before the start of your day, have that chance to ask the questions and get those answers.
Yeah.
And I think, from a personal perspective, from my kind of, professional kind of head on this, I'm really looking forward to that for me.
Yes.
I'm really excited to be able to share it across the region, but I'm really looking forward to attending and having a bit of a chance to digest what I might have heard on that week and think about the questions, because I know that sometimes, and I know we both work with students as well, and we find like you don't always know what your questions are. Even if you start kind of listening to something live, it can be difficult to get.
Yeah.
So we hope that we're doing this in a way that will help you get the most out of it and, help you access it in a way that's most meaningful to you, essentially.
Exactly. And as Sasha said, we've watched a lot of webinars and attended live and pre-recorded ones, and concentrating on a laptop or concentrating on a computer is, I think, far different than being in a conference hall or in a workshop room or whatever, where you've maybe got a little bit more freedom to think. And some webinars, it's a lot of information all at once. We've just done a teacher event, a live teacher event just recently, and the faces that we see is just like, that was a lot of information. And you're going, it's okay, you don't have to ask me all the questions now. It's fine, we completely appreciate it. So having that opportunity to maybe revisit the webinar again, reflect on it. It might be a question that you think of at the most random of times, but you know that you've got an opportunity to either ask it or note it down and email us, and we can ask on your behalf if you couldn't attend the live Q&A. So so it's really exciting. I think they're really excited to bring things up to the Northeast. We have brought a physical conference up in the past.
We did, yeah.
And they were really, sounds really silly, but they were quite surprised at how many people wanted to access it, or were able to access it. So they know there's an appetite in this region, and we all are very passionate across the board, regardless of what area of education we work in. So they're really keen to get started. And one of those, as I said before, we are going to look at chatting to UCAS around their kind of 16 to 18 support, but they're kind of their younger age group support on their website, because it's always talked about in terms of the course search function and applying through UCAS, but there's so much information on that website in general about apprenticeships, internships, student study programs, and traineeships. There's so much information on there that will be suitable for 11 to 16 schools, and obviously beyond that. So we're going to look to maybe do something a little bit more bespoke
Yeah, I think even looking before that, they've got loads of information about picking options,
Yeah.
GCSE options, and even kind of earlier on in that educational career where you start to make those decisions and how early that comes in. They've got loads of great resources for that, so it'll be nice to be able to showcase them a little bit more. Of course, we'll signpost to them as well, so you'll hear all about that.
Do you have something that is coming up for students, which is very, very exciting? And Sasha and I are kind of a part of kind of developing alongside some fantastic colleagues in our colleges, which is a study buddy app, Future Me Study Buddy. This is it's a fantastic resource that is hopefully, and what we're aiming to be, quite empowering for students to take ownership of their kind of academic readiness, if you like, or their resilience to learning. We know how, not in normal times, if you like, how difficult it is sometimes to prepare for exams, coursework, to balance your social life alongside your education. Some students might have part-time jobs. So our friends at Sunderland College initially developed this app as part of their Future Me programme for their students, which we've been absolutely delighted to work alongside them to expand for the rest of the region. And it is their study buddy. We want students to have their own little study buddy with a calendar that you can kind of plan your study periods and break periods, to hopefully really prepare students to be successful in their kind of education. But that's not all, is it, Sasha?
There's loads more that's going to be on the app. As Rachel said, there's a really nice study calendar, and they can input study sessions. But we've got a whole kind of loads of content that's going to be making its way onto there, about that sort of academic resilience and managing time and study skills, but also about thinking about that sometimes and putting what they're doing at the time that they're studying into the context of, well, where might you go next? And we've got loads of content on there about kind of making decisions about the future, and whether that be kind of looking at different courses or different qualification types, but just really thinking about what they're doing at that current time period and how that's going to help them reach their goals, whatever those goals are. We've got loads of really nice content about that, and kind of little resources and activities to really help young people get the most out of using that app.
Yeah, and there's study skills as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
so we've got some work on I'm going to say an acronym because I've had a bit of a brain fart. I can't remember what the actual full word of it is. We've got some NLP support on there, so kind of looking at how students maybe use that to aid their own learning. And we're looking to develop that content throughout the year as well, so it won't just focus on that one particular methodology, if you like. We'll look to add to certain things around mindfulness, like keeping calm. We've got some very exciting potential kind of things underway.
And I think what I am really excited for about the app is how reflective it's going to encourage young people to be. And I think we all know what it's like when you're busy and you said thinking about time management and the balance in lots of different things. Actually giving them a resource to actually think about themselves and their own journeys, and giving them some practical suggestions on how to do that. So I know that there are some little activities in there that even prompt them to kind of pair up with someone that they might be sat studying with. So it might be, if they're sat kind of thinking about a particular topic that they're revising for, or, thinking about something that they've been discussing with a friend, they could actually then bring in some of these activities and both get the most out of it. Because I think it's so easy sometimes for young people, but I'm speaking from my own experience, to just do.
Or you think I'm gonna do English today.
Yeah.
And you're going, what, all day for the full 12 hours that you're awake for? And Where in reality it's like, well, I'm going to aim to start on the hour, probably start at 8 minutes past the hour, and then go, oh, I can't start at 8 minutes past the hour.
I have to start.
I'll start quarter past, but what that really means is I'll get everything out at quarter past, and then I'll get my stationery out, and then I'll make a drink and go to the toilet. But I'll really start at 1:30, and then before you know it, you've just procrastinated for probably an hour.
I think it's that thing of after you've done all of that, what does sitting down to do English, as you say, look like? And actually there'll be some tips and tricks on that app in terms of how to get the most out of that time. And I think sometimes there's almost like a thought of what studying or revising should look like.
I
hope that in some ways that app kind of quashes that, almost
personalizes it as well, doesn't it? So and talking of personalization, there'll be an opportunity for the student or the learner to kind of download their kind of college or sixth form kind of timetable or calendar, so that'll be in their diary always, should they decide to download it, so they can see what their week looks like, and they can really truly personalize it to themselves, so they're not maybe relying on a friend to revise with. I mean, speaking from personal experience, I remember, receiving a text being like, is your dining room table open? I'm coming down. And it didn't matter what I was doing. They were doing law on my kitchen table whilst I was doing psychology or sports science or something. But it was a case of we did it together, as opposed to saying, well, actually, we're both doing this subject. This time's convenient for us. Let's focus on this particular area and we can help each other with that. It was more of a person-to-person, let's just revise in solidarity. As opposed to being purposeful with it. So hopefully it might, students might utilise it in that way. But that should be coming soon.
Yeah, it will be. So look out for that. Please tell your students about it. Have a look at it yourselves as well. I think I'm excited to see the finished product.
And a big thank you to Sunderland College and our kind of staff across our partners who work for the UniConnect programme, who've been kind of paramount and really vital in the initial development of the app, but also what that app could look like in the future. So it's by no means our project. We certainly couldn't do that by ourselves. So a big thank you to everyone who's been part of the development of that, and well done on creating something so fantastic. But it's hopefully going to be supportive of all students eventually. What does that take us to the end of our introduction, Sasha?
I think it does. I think it's been quite a big introduction.
It has. We did say that we talked quite a bit.
You'll understand now why we're
doing this.
You can understand where that's come from. But I hope it's been useful. Sit with a cuppa, have a bit of time to kind of digest it, and I hope that actually once we start, maybe you've listened to some more, that things start kind of fitting into place, and you're as excited as we are about what's coming up, in the weeks and months that follow, because we're certainly looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, I love a good chat with you, Sasha.
Oh, thanks. Well, we'll leave you there, I think. Thank you very much for listening. And I do hope you found it useful, as I say, and I do hope that you will take a look at some of our other content that's coming up. As I said, do look at our website, outreachnortheast.ac.uk/CPD for some of the elements that we've talked about today, but you'll find loads of different information, heaps of resources to take a look at kind of in the meantime. But do get in touch if there's anything you think we've missed, if there's anything you'd like to hear us chat about for a podcast. But thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.